Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Tonight, we're going to talk about The Light of Xaryxis, the final book in the 5th edition Spelljammer box set. It's the adventure module. Overall, I generally approve of it. I mean, it's only 64 pages long, so it's not nearly as long-winded as a lot of the separately published adventure modules they've put out. Of course, it doesn't have a ton of setting information in it since that's put into different books and all that kind of stuff. But it's punchy. I like that it uses astral elves as villains. The Xaryxis astral elf empire has very Shi'ar empire from X-Men kind of qualities to it, especially down to some like the royal politics going on at the top with, rival princess and prince kind of shit going on. It's very railroady, like right up there with like Horde of the Dragon Queen level of railroad kind of adventure style, which to me is a bit of a flaw. Although there's certainly, like ideas and resources within it that you can kind of just pull out and just kind of like make a more sandbox kind of environment for characters to on their own discover that this is a major threat that they might, have some, desire to put an end to. It says that it's based or it's inspired by Flash Gordon. Beyond the fact that there's Flash Gordon elements across all of Spelljammer itself, I don't really see that, executed terribly well in the text of this, beyond just the rather abrupt opening scenario it has. It's for levels 5 and up. So it recommends either, like kicking it off after running through one of the box sets. I think Ghost of the Salt Marsh actually would also be a good one to use to like build your characters up to a high enough level to start this, since that one already gives the characters being used to being around a coastal environment, which is helpful for meeting Spelljammers. And there's the fourth adventure in that module where the characters are supposed to go to a shipwreck where a druid and some critters are hanging out on a ghost ship that's adrift. You could turn that into a living ship, and the person who's hiring the characters go find it might actually be the actual like navigator or something that's been stranded, and they've been looking to find their ship and get home. And then by that point they now have access to a Spelljammer that they've kind of been led into a little bit more organically, and you can still use the same kind of like world-ending threat that this presents. You can use this adventure to destroy any planet that you want. And D&D, the thing that's kind of funny is if you were to run this off the box sets, well, then you're destroying Toril potentially. The premise of what the Astral Elves are doing is kind of a reverse Star Killer base from Force Awakens, where they plant these crystal seeds on planets that will then grow these massive mountain-sized vines of crystal that will both stretch out up into the atmosphere and also burrow down towards the core. And as soon as they've developed enough, they'll suck all the life force out of the planet and then beam it to the Xaryxis star system to keep their star alive. And they just do this periodically. Just when their star starts to dim, they'll just randomly pick another planet and destroy it. And, there's the kind of a vague implication that the characters can, like avert disaster on their world if they can go, put an end to the star and the hijinks at the top most levels of the Empire and all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it gives you, in the process of getting from point A to point B, it's what I would describe almost as like a setting tour guide kind of adventure almost, because it tries to lead you through like most of your basic classic Spelljammer kind of scenarios and has you meet as many different kinds of Spelljammer races and alien creatures as it can. Leading you up to uniting a bunch of like disparate factions in a destroyed star system to then go and take out the Xaryxis. You can see bits and pieces of things from science fiction that's taking beats from, and that's fine. Most D&D games are, based on something else to some degree or another. It's a little bit necessary so that the players are better able to role play if they're easier able to understand kind of what the story expectations are because of just their own experience as players, experiencing how stories work and all that kind of stuff. So stuff, I don't need it to be super horribly original and all that. But because it kicks off at 5th level, if you don't want to use the opening scenario the way it is, or if you want to have the characters have been, Spelljammer characters the whole time, you're going to have to come up with your own kind of stories and some way to sandbox things so they can discover these plots on their own without necessarily, having earthquakes and giant vines growing out of some town they just randomly show up on. And then they meet some pirate lady who wants their help getting to her ship, and then it turns out her ship is a spelljammer, and then all of a sudden they're on a voyage to the Rock of Brawl, and then they go here, and then they go there, and then they go everywhere, kind of stuff. As I said, though, there are resources and villains and such to be found in it that are quite useful and are interesting, and save you a little time of having to come up with stuff to populate and put out there. Using the Xaryxis as like a slow burn background threat is good. But as I was saying, though, there's like, I don't get a good sensation that there's a real ticking clock kind of effect going on here. They're a little vague about exactly how long it takes for these crystal vines to destroy planets. So it's not like when they leave whatever world they start off on, they know that they only have 36 hours to save the Earth or anything like that. And so I feel like you could ratchet that up a little bit, help establish a bit more tension by making them realize that they gotta figure this out fast or their world's fucked. Thing is, though, is when you think about what's happening with these crystal vines and that they're burrowing down into the planet's crust and extending up in the atmosphere, and they're massively huge things, gargantuan in scale. It's maybe a little bit like Flash Gordon. Even if they do manage to get to the Xaryxis star system and kill the star and get it so that, in any worlds they've infected with seeds are no longer going to be drained to stop the process in the midst of what's going on, that still is like a cataclysmic level event has just happened on that world. It's just that world gets to recover from it, kind of, if it can. Whole cities and continents have been, ripped apart and shaken by, the growth of these things, and they're still going to be there. So now your fantasy world has these miles-high crystal vines stretching up into the sky and all that kind of stuff. That's forever going to, be a part of their landscape. And what happens when they start to crumble and fall and all that kind of shit? It's still, like I said, you can use this adventure to basically just wipe out any world you want. You want to put a firm end on your homebrew world. Light of Xaryxis gives you the tools to do that. You want to see, Faerun crumble and burn. Light of Xaryxis gives you that. You want to explain why Athos hasn't been around in any of these materials, despite the fact that they have had a few of the Dark Sun critters show up in some of these books here for Spelljammer. Well, you can kind of explain both of that. Maybe Athos was one of the worlds earlier destroyed by Xaryxis, and that's why you have all these Thrycreen and Braxet and other few little refugee kind of peoples here and there now scattered across the cosmos. Like I said, there's definitely things to be pulled out of it that you can use. It's just it's too railroady. And, those things sound good on paper, but, players will pretty much always, find a way to pop off the rails. And, really, it's just, I feel like it's a more honest role-playing experience if you have the least amount of specific direction for what the players have to do next, whereas instead, they have a goal, and they have some sort of dilemma in front of them, and they have some sort of, a reason to make sure that it's resolved and that there's stuff out there for them to find. But, for your own sake as a dungeon master, the more open-ended you've designed your adventure scenario, the more able you are to deal with players doing unexpected or coming up with ideas that you wouldn't necessarily have come up with. When you have something that's super railroaded like this, I don't know, your improvisation is kind of hampered by it because you're trying to stick to the script, and then you're left with not really knowing what to do with yourself a bit more likely. Obviously, the more experienced you are, the dungeon master, the better you get at it. But since some of these products are still marketed with the idea that a relatively fresh DM might be the one picking this up and trying to run this shit. You know, like, it's just having like this flash forward through like 80 different scenes and just hoping that the players go along with all the steps involved in it to get all the way to the glorious ending. You know, I don't know, is that really like the way to be teaching DMs to run things? I guess it is, since they want everything to be more about creating cultivated experiences and all that kind of stuff. At least that's how it seems to me. So anyway, I guess, like, overall, I'd give the adventure a 4 out of 5, with the caveat that, like a lot of D&D's railroad adventures, I tend to only use pieces out of them myself. If I you know, were to run a Spelljammer game or anything, I certainly would use, you know, Xaryxis as a background, you know, potential threat to be had. But I doubt I'd run through the exact sequence of events that they have spelled out in this. And so I guess that's it. The 3 parts of the new Spelljammer box set have been reviewed. You can see the other videos on my channel. They're the last 2 prior to this one, so it shouldn't be all that hard to find. Hit like and subscribe. Down in the description box below, there will probably be a link to Rocket Cadets in the 11th Dimension, a role-playing game I wrote that has similar themes to Spelljammer, although it's got more kind of a World War II heavy metal kind of vibe to it, as opposed to the kind of vaguely like pirates and steampunk kind of thing that Spelljammer does. And I guess that's about it. So until next time.